Hey everyone, and welcome to a fresh episode of Show Me the Crypto. This week we chat with Randi Hipper, aka Miss Teen Crypto, all about her mission to onboard more crypto users who are specifically Gen Z. Ulf, what did you think of this interview?
Yeah, it was great. Honestly, Randi was an awesome guest. She killed it. It's so interesting to get the perspective of someone who is Gen Z. She's the youngest guest we've had on the show, and she just did a great job explaining her kind of take as a Gen Z and in introducing many Gen Zs to the space.
Yeah, we touch on all sorts of things like maximalism in the space. We talk about the future of NFT and Web3 gaming. We talk about some of her content. Make sure you watch till the very end. Enjoy this episode.
Show me the crypto. Show me the crypto. Show me the crypto.
In a world on the brink of disruption, two men will bring you clarity by interviewing some of the most intelligent and influential names in the blockchain world. Welcome to Show Me the Crypto with your hosts, Wade Patterson and Ulf Lonergan.
Well, hi there, and welcome to Show Me the Crypto. My name is Wade Patterson.
And I'm Ulf Lonergan.
We're a couple of friends from Canada who love learning about cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology, and we're happy you're along for the ride. Whether you're a crypto virgin or you know your way around the block, we hope our interviews with some of the most intelligent and influential people in the blockchain space help deliver you with value. And on this episode, we're joined by Randi Hipper, aka Miss Teen Crypto. After hearing her dad talk about Bitcoin for 6 years, Miss Teen Crypto finally took an interest in the space while in high school and hasn't looked back since. As host of the Miss Teen Crypto show, Randi has interviewed household names such as David Gokhshtein, Charlie Lee, and Benjamin Cowen. Her main goal is to help spread crypto adoption to Gen Z. Randi, welcome to Show Me the Crypto.
Wow, thank you so much for that intro. How are you guys doing? Thank you for having me.
You're welcome, and we're doing great. We're really excited about this conversation. So the first question I have to ask you, the big question, according to your website, you're 19 years old. Question number one, when is your 20th birthday? And perhaps the bigger question, what's going to happen when you turn 20 and are no longer technically a teen to the Miss Teen Crypto name?
Well, okay, so actually, fun fact, I'm turning 20 1 month from our recording date. So right now, 1 month from today, I will be turning 20. Anyone that has a suggestion, make sure you drop those in the comments. I'll take a look at them. I have a countdown, and I just released a video with the dev, actually. If you guys haven't heard of him, we just released a video what happens when Miss Teen turns 20. So you should check that one out.
Awesome. We'll definitely link to that in the description.
I love it. I love it. We'll stay tuned for the big change. There's got to be something coming. Awesome. So Wade mentioned in the bio, you learned about Bitcoin from your dad. He was talking about it for many, many years before you took an interest. So what was that turning point? What eventually did get you interested?
So when I first heard about Bitcoin, I was 13. And at that point, it was around 2016. And there wasn't much adoption. The most of the space was just wallets, people using wallets. There wasn't many cool, fun platforms like there are now. By 2019, he was going to Litecoin Summit. I didn't know why he was leaving the house to go to in New York here to go to Vegas to hang out with strangers he met on the internet and talk about all this money stuff. So I essentially didn't think I could do anything with Bitcoin. That was my problem. I thought it was just for adults, people in finance, numbers. Then when he came home from the summit, even a few months before that, we did our first Bitcoin transaction. And when he came home from the summit, he gave me a wallet to play with. But during that first transaction, when I was 16, that's when it clicked. All you have to do is scan a QR code, copy and paste an address, and that's it. Anyone, anywhere in the world can send and receive money instantly. I could go into the store, they scan my phone, or I scan their QR code, and that's it. I could walk out instead of doing this whole fiat interaction where a lot of friends I know throw their pennies in the garbage. So no one wants to carry a wallet. No one wants to carry loose change. So crypto, right there, changed the way we transact forever. Then I also saw I had $200 in my bank account. And being that it was my savings, and I was taught in school that if you leave your money in the bank, the number eventually goes up. You earn by, with interest, right? You leave your money in the bank, you earn interest. But I saw the number always stayed the same. It was always $200. And I figured, hey, why not put it in Bitcoin? I'm not touching this money anyway. Just put it in Bitcoin and maybe it'll appreciate. So it was just at the same time, a bunch of things went off in my head. And then by the time I was 17, I wanted to start minting crypto.
It's interesting though, because it's impressive to still have that realization at that age, I think, to understand that. So prior to that, was finances or anything along those lines something that was on your radar at all, or what specifically kind of like kickstarted you into that mindset of I'm going to invest, I'm going to grow my wealth and that type of thing?
Well, it was initially the technology that caught my eye. Then the finance kind of came after it. And while I started learning about Bitcoin and what Bitcoin was and what it stood for, why it was created, that it like kind of enlightened me a little bit to what money is and what it all means. Then I started noticing going to the store, prices would change. Why would price change? Inflation. Then I realized what inflation was and that my dollar today could buy me nothing near what my dad could have bought when he was little. He would tell me, oh, what I used to go to the pizza shop and pay 50 cents for 2 slices and a drink. Now 2 slices and a drink at any pizzeria is probably like $6 now if you're lucky. So I just saw my purchasing power is not the same. Even before the pandemic, I saw they were printing too much money. And the more they print, and just being kind of simple about it, the more of a supply of something, the less it's worth, right? So that's kind of where everything started clicking for me in terms of finance. And I just fell down the whole crypto rabbit hole, NFTs, all of that stuff.
So speaking of that, how did that evolution look? I mean, I guess it was Bitcoin that was the entry point for you.
Yeah.
But coming into the space, were you open-minded to altcoins initially? And at what point did you see NFTs and start to understand, okay, this is an interesting concept as well?
Yeah, so I kind of came into crypto right off the bat, knowing that Bitcoin wasn't the only coin, being that my dad was very into Litecoin. He was going to the Litecoin Summit. So I understood the difference between Bitcoin and altcoins. Then while, NFTs weren't that big, especially when I started my Twitter account, April 2020 is when they were just starting to spark up. By November 2020 is when I started minting NFTs. And why I started doing that is because I saw a bunch of my friends that were, prominent people in this space started minting them and saying, hey, this is a different way for people to be self-sovereign, right? Bitcoin, cryptocurrency gives you the opportunity to be your own bank. I saw with NFTs, it could give you the opportunity to be your own store, be your own gallery, be your own business, being that previously, even still now, artists had to rely on physical galleries to approve them, say, hey, your artwork is worthy. You could display it in my gallery. Well, now an artist could say, hey, I don't need you. I could go and display my art on a global stage, earn the royalties for that, and just being able to control their business. Even musicians, same thing. Like, you release your music. If someone buys a certain amount of it, maybe you do a private concert for them. Maybe you do a feature on their song. There's just so many utilities that NFTs could bring to people to be self-sovereign. And even as a creator, right? Instead of sending me a $5 super chat on YouTube, then why don't you just buy my NFT? And that way you could get something that you're supporting me, yet you get something in return that you could keep, trade, or give it to a friend or sell it. Do whatever you want with it. There was just so much that NFTs that I love, that I connected to, that I couldn't stay away from that.
And was in terms of like we're talking about, how you discovered crypto, and a lot of this came down through your dad. Was NFTs the same, or did NFTs kind of come potentially a little later through anyone else, or how did you really dive into that side? Because it is kind of a whole different side of crypto.
Yeah, it was just through crypto Twitter, and I was just scrolling around, and I had friends, like I said, that were very early in NFTs, like Ken Bozak, Crypto Stash, a bunch of people that were just extremely early that were minting NFTs, and we were all kind of like joining in at the same time. It's just one person started doing it, and the next, and the next. So we were all very early, especially on Wax blockchains, where we were kind of originally really minting NFTs. So it was just that I was scrolling through crypto Twitter, saw my friends getting into it, and of course, me and my dad, it kind of went from he was telling me about crypto to him asking now me the questions about crypto, and we're on this crypto journey together. So when we saw NFTs, we were just like, wow, this is another really cool way for, of course, people to be self-sovereign and a whole different part of this revolution, especially gaming. And NFTs, I think, is going to be a huge catalyst in adoption, especially amongst Gen Z. But that's like a whole other subject. But yeah, it was just, I saw other people doing it, and I was like, wow, this is truly amazing. And I really want to spread the word about that. So that's why I started doing it.
That's cool. I love that you're having conversations with your dad. He's asking you questions, but this originally started from you learning from him. I feel like so often in this space, there's like even, people will joke about how like oh, my parents kind of would like never understand this and stuff like that. And in your case, it's kind of the opposite. You learned it from your dad, and now you guys are bouncing off each other in these conversations about crypto. So that's awesome to hear. So I want to jump back just a little bit because I am curious to get your take on, we've been talking about sort of like different types of crypto, different coins, different projects. And I'm curious about your thoughts on maximalism in this space. You've been around here for a couple of years now, sort of actively participating, maybe a few years, and especially on crypto Twitter. What are your thoughts on maximalism around specific coins? Bitcoin obviously being the biggest one, and how that is in this space.
Maximalism. It's a spicy topic for sure. I think maximalism comes from a good place, right? I think Bitcoin maximalists, they see, like, for example, because there's ETH maximalists, there's other maximalists, but let's use Bitcoin maximalists as an example. They're saying, hey, Bitcoin is the only coin. This is going to solve all of our issues. Everyone should get into this coin because they feel like it's the right way to go, to only be on this route. Well, I think they're doing it from a good place. They just want everyone to do the right thing, and the right thing in their eyes. However, I feel as though there's a lot of things that NFTs and other blockchains and maybe different consensuses could solve that Bitcoin can. I just don't picture a lot of people maybe spending their Bitcoin to buy NFTs. People want to hold their Bitcoin. Meanwhile, a lot of people like in El Salvador are transacting it on the daily. So I'm not really sure how that's all going to work out. Bitcoin is the only coin, but I do think it shouldn't. I even tweeted this exactly. It shouldn't be about coin versus coin. It should be about us versus them. There's a bigger battle here. I think just fighting within the space is kind of pointless when the whole point of the space is to give us our rights to be self-sovereign individuals and to decentralize ourselves and be our own bank, be our own store, whatever that may be. And to fight about like which coin is better, proof of stake or proof of work, when there's a bigger revolution ahead with CBD season coming and, maybe people trying to use this technology for the worst. So we have to make sure that we're protecting the fundamentals of our space. So I don't think we should be fighting with each other at all. It should be about us as a community. If one wins, we all win in my eyes. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Good point. And speaking of community and some of the relationships you developed over Twitter and learning more about the space, I'm curious on the other side, what was it like in real life, your high school friends and that type of thing, as you're getting so deep into all of this? I mean, was it something that they grasped as well, or how did you find that?
When I was in high school, I was always very nerdy. I was always the one in the corner. I was doing my work all the time. I was making study guides and people would come to me for study guides. So when I first got into crypto, people were like, oh, it's just something else Randy's into. People thought I was a little bit crazy because people all of a sudden I was deep into Bitcoin. I was making videos at my school. I had business crypto cards. I was putting all over the school QR codes. People were concerned about me, to say the least. Teachers would actually come up to me and ask me if I was okay. They would tell me Bitcoin's a Ponzi scheme, delete your account. I had a counselor come up to me in the hallway, be like, Randy, are you okay? I'm like, why? What's wrong? He's like, well, everyone's talking about you. Teachers, students, people were concerned. But then it kind of turned around pretty quick, because when I was originally talking about Bitcoin in school, it was $7,000. And then it started to rise. It went to 10, then it went to 20. Then all of a sudden what I was saying didn't sound as crazy anymore, especially because I gave some kids Bitcoin in school. They saw their numbers started to go up. They got excited. Teachers would stop class and turn it into a Bitcoin Q&A. So I graduated June 2021. By, the next year, May 2022, I was actually back at my high school. They invited me back to teach 2 investing classes about Bitcoin. So while I was in high school, it was a little difficult. People thought I was crazy, lost a lot of friends because of it. But then it all started to make sense to people. And then I got invited back, and a lot of people are happy with it now. So it was a journey.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a journey. I'm wondering, in those early days, that's a lot of pressure and a lot of peers and people around you, maybe not really supporting what you're doing. Was that deflating at all to sort of keep that interest and kind of keep pushing forward with what you believed in?
So it was a little difficult, and it was always kind of a thing in high school where I struggled. Even my family didn't like that I was doing crypto, but what I felt was, hey, they don't understand what I'm doing. And that's why they don't like it. Once people start to learn, because I know Bitcoin is inevitable, this technology is inevitable. So if I quit now, then everyone finds out about Bitcoin later. Then why shouldn't I have stuck with it anyway? People just didn't understand what I was doing. When I was referring to that teacher that came up to me earlier, was asking, "Are you okay? Everyone's talking about you." What I said to him was, "They just don't understand, and that's why they're upset." And then he was like, "That makes sense. Keep doing what you're doing." And, with the support of the few people like that, I got through it. But it was very much, I had to stick in my convictions. Of course, I had my dad in my corner, even my little sister that's 17 now, she was in my corner because she understood as well. So just having that support and just sticking in my convictions and doing my own research and really understanding what I'm into and just trying to articulate it in a nice way, then I got through it. But thankfully, I had support.
Well, good for you for having that conviction, because it's definitely not easy. And when you think about high school and all of the little pockets of gossip and everything going on, like that is something that's very difficult. But on the flip side, I mean, one of your missions is to help onboard as many in Gen Z specifically and help them understand about this technology. With that in mind, do you find that Gen Z is gets it a little bit quicker maybe than the other generations? And if so, why?
They definitely do. Gen Z, wow, we're digitally native. I mean, when I was little, the only thing I would want for Christmas is an iTunes gift card so I could get virtual money and go on the App Store with that virtual money, purchase another digital game. Then within that digital game, I'm using my digital money again to buy digital assets, to buy digital currency that I'm then transacting in the game. The only difference between, those Web 2 games and Web 3 games is that I actually own the asset. Now, imagine how much money I could recover if those tokens were on the blockchain, if those assets were on the blockchain, where now I could trade them, I could sell them, I could rent them out to somebody else if I'm not using the asset. So there's just so much more that NFTs and crypto can do that's so easily integratable into our lives. I mean, I don't know anyone that really carries a wallet anymore. It's always about Cash App and Venmo and PayPal. And what do those platforms now have on there? Bitcoin, Litecoin, ETH, even Bitcoin Cash. But I think there's so much that's easily integratable into our lives. Being digitally native, the concept of digital currency is so easy. It's just the next step of just, hey, what's a wallet? Okay, now get some Bitcoin. But there's some barriers to entry for Gen Z, being that if you're under 18, you can't get on an exchange. The only option you have is a Bitcoin ATM really at that point, or your parent, if they're cool like mine. But that's why I think the barrier holding Gen Z back is the accessibility. Otherwise, then the whole concept of NFTs, digital currency, wallets, it's all simple. It's all easy for us.
So, what are some of the questions or misconceptions in all your time trying to educate Gen Z, onboard them, help them out? You must get questions that are either, oh yeah, I get that one a lot, or maybe some that are just misconceptions about the space that you always have to re-educate people on.
Especially with Gen Z, there's not much. Because again, like the whole concept of digital money, oh, hey, I have my wallet, it's mine, there's no one in between. It's very easy to understand. I think, again, like the barriers to entry, like how do I get Bitcoin? Why can't I buy Bitcoin? If it's so cool, then why can't I get it at under 18? I think that's definitely a question I get. And another question I get, which is a pretty beginner question for all ages, is I don't have right now $20,000 to buy a whole Bitcoin. What do I do? And that's where I explain dollar cost averaging, that this is just digital currency, that if you go to the airport and swap your US dollars for euros, you're just swapping the money for, now you're just doing it digitally. You swap your fiat money for a digital currency and you could get bits and pieces. $5 of Bitcoin exchange for $5 a US. And people are like, oh, that makes sense. So I think pretty much those are the two biggest things. And it's really unfortunate that Gen Z can't get into crypto as easy as they should.
In terms of your content, one of the things you've done in the past is these streeter interviews, talking to kind of random people, getting their feedback. First off, has there been like an interesting interaction? Prior to doing this podcast, I used to be a reporter at a newspaper, and time to time I would have to go do these types of interviews. And some of the conversations were super interesting, but like, are there any highlights in terms of somebody who is just way off base in terms of their understanding of crypto, or just in general, what kind of experiences have you had talking to random people about Bitcoin?
Wow, so many different ones, to be honest. And it all really depends on the where in the city you are. Like in Times Square, you'll find people that are much more friendly. But if you go to the financial district, like I went to Wall Street, that was scary. They didn't want to talk to me. I got in arguments with a few of them because they didn't like to talk about Bitcoin. I one time I went up to somebody and I was like, "Hey, can I interview you?" They're like, "Yeah, sure. What's about?" I was like, "Oh, I just want to ask you about Bitcoin. If you know about Bitcoin, you can say yes or no, give your opinions. Like this is America." And he's like, "Oh no, Bitcoin, no," and like literally ran away from me. So I've had like a few really weird interactions, but a lot of them are very simple. People, especially when I first started in November 2020, is when I first started hitting the streets. People would just look at me like I had 10 heads when I'm like, "Hey, like, do you know what Bitcoin is?" And they're like, "Bitcoin?" And like they would look at me like I'm crazy. Then I would hand them my card, be like, "Hey, this is what it is." And a lot of people are like, "Hey, is that a stock?" So it was, but now that was like 2020, 2021. Nowadays, when I go up to people, they're like, "Yeah, I know what Bitcoin is. I've heard of that." And I'm like, "Okay, do you own any?" And they're like, "No." And that's where we're at now. So a lot more people know about Bitcoin than they did in the past. But now the thing is getting it in people's hands.
Yeah, I agree. It's like it has definitely become a household name where now it's probably hard to find someone who would answer no to like the question like, do you know what Bitcoin is? Or like, have you at least are you familiar with like the name of Bitcoin? I think everybody's aware of it, but the amount of people who actually own crypto is still, I think, quite small. And when we're in the space, it's hard. I think it's easy to forget that because you're just surrounded by, people who own some crypto. And even at this point, a lot of like my friends own crypto. But if I go just a little outside of that, I think the great majority still don't. So what do you think it's going to take to sort of actually get crypto in the majority of people's hands at some point down the road?
It's going to happen naturally. This is all a progression. Even when I first came into this space, it's a dramatic turn of who's here, who's still building, and all the new people that are coming in. I think especially this upcoming bull run, and I feel the FOMO coming in already. Like if you look at Google Trends, if you look at all of these, factors in terms of sentiment in the market, there's a lot of people flowing in right now, and big money has been coming into crypto throughout this entire bear market. Big names like Fidelity still in crypto, JP Morgan, Chase, as much as FUD as they put out. They have a patent approved in November for their the crypto wallet. So there's so many people still coming into this space, especially with El Salvador, Bitcoin being legal tender. There's just so much adoption, so many people building. Again, NFT gaming is really going to pop off in the next bull run. It's all a natural progression. It's all inevitable. It'll all happen, especially because CBDCs, and I hate to bring it up because it's so negative. However, it's already released in a ton of countries. Actually, in the US, they had a whole pamphlet on the Federal Reserve website, came out January 2022, talking about how good CBDCs are, how it could help us. So this is already in the woodworks. Now we're going to hit a point where people already see within the financial system now that their accessibility to funds are not the same. They can't move money the way they want. Now with CBDCs, they're even tighter closed into that system. Now people are going to ask, "Hey, what's money that I could move whenever I want, however much I want to move to whoever I want, no matter what day of the week it is?" Like today, Martin Luther King Day, banks are closed, but Bitcoin's always open, right? So people are going to be looking for that alternative. And I can't wait for that crossroads because that's going to be a huge explosion for the crypto space for sure. But I think the biggest explosion is, again, when that will happen. CBD is coming out. I think this year is going to be a big push for crypto, though. I have a good feeling.
So from understanding, right, are you saying that your belief is that CBDCs, whether those are good or bad, from anyone's viewpoint, will help with the adoption of crypto as a whole due to like the technology aspect?
It's going to push the education on decentralization and being your own bank. And that's like the crossroads I'm talking about, where people are going to say, "Hey, okay, we're closed and we're being taken over." Because once CBDCs come, it's not just a financial eclipse. It's your whole life is being eclipsed. Like you can't do what you want anymore. You can't, if you filled up your car too many times this month, you can't do that anymore. Your CBDC won't permit you. This is something that's dangerous. Now with Bitcoin cryptocurrency, people are like, "Hey, I have this money that I can spend whenever I want to whoever I want." That's so important. And I think the push of decentralization is going to be a whole new thought brought to life. Because again, in America, we're a little spoiled. But in other third world countries, they're seeing this and they're picking it up faster than we are.
And so something you mentioned in the last, when you were answering the last question, there was a little bit around like the market and the market sentiment right now. Obviously, we've been in a bear market, the whole crypto space for a while now. And I'm curious with what your thoughts are with where we are today. There's a lot of news, there's a lot of chatter around, are we entering a bull run? Are things turning around? We've seen a recent rise in prices. And I'm curious your thoughts on where we are and how 2023 might play out.
I'm not one to give price predictions because, again, I'm not a charter or anything like that. I go on like the zesty feelings I have. And overall, I'm always bullish on crypto. I always have a great feeling about 2023, even though I had good feelings about 2022. I knew at the beginning of the year, the macroeconomic scene of the world, it wasn't great. So that could mean volatility in terms of the market. And with volatility in the market means bad actors being shaken out, just like every other bear market. So I was bullish on the space last year just because of what we did. We cleaned out everybody. We're still cleaning out a little bit, and that gives us room to grow. Now, other people are now realizing, hey, maybe exchanges aren't what we thought they were, being that we left the traditional system to be our own bank, but now we relied on these other parties as banks. We learned our lessons with that. People got greedy. Now people are like, hey, all right, I'm going to pull my crypto off of the exchanges. We've seen billions of dollars being flown off of exchanges into personal wallets, which means less people are willing to sell, less selling pressure. I don't know. I don't know about prices. I don't know if there's a bull run incoming. I think Bitcoin does what everyone doesn't think it's going to do. Last bull run, everyone was like laser eyes. We're going to 100K. We went down. People are saying now, hey, we're going to 10K. I don't know. We have to see. Bitcoin always does what people don't expect it to do. So I'm sitting here, I'm waiting. I stick to my plan. And I believe in this space as a whole. So I'm bullish either way.
Ulf, do you realize our audience has been either watching or listening to this episode for 20 minutes?
20 minutes? No, they should probably subscribe.
Yeah, they should subscribe. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you comment and turn on notifications. And if you're listening to this podcast, especially if you're on Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating and a review.
We're also on Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok. So go check out the episode description. You can find all that information below. And we have an update on the NFT, don't we?
That's right. We didn't previously mention this, but this NFT for OG supporter is a one of one. There will only be one of this kind ever minted, and we have a few surprises for the person who purchases it. The link is in the episode description.
And back to the episode.
So one thing I'm curious about, Randy, is the timing a little bit. So you mentioned that you launched your channel and some of your content in April 2020, I think it was. Did you have in your mind at that point in time, like, again, I know that you talked about you don't predict financial or anything like that, but did you feel like the timing was good in the sense of like that was on the cusp of a bull run starting? Did you feel like whether it happens in 6 months or a year, like something's going to happen pretty soon when you did launch that content?
When I started tweeting, I had no idea what was going to happen. I'm going to be honest. I had no idea. I just want to be a part of the crypto space, especially because at that time it was lockdown. The world was so sad. And I hate being sad. I hated being home because I loved going to school and just like talking to people all day and like doing nerdy things. And everything was shut down for a while. So everyone was just sitting home and doing nothing. I didn't want to do nothing. So I was just like, okay, I want to be a part of the crypto community. I didn't want to use my real name at the time because I was little and I didn't want to just like be boring. So I was like, okay, what's a cool name? Miss Teen Crypto. Checked Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, all these social media. So it was available everywhere. I was like, okay, this is meant to be. I took it, just started tweeting. Then I saw people started catching on. And then I started doing videos and everything kind of just progressed until into what it is now. And I just really fell in love with this space. And I guess the lockdown gave me the opportunity to really start this thing for myself. But I really love this space. So that's why I wanted to be a part of it. I didn't care bull run or not. I just wanted to educate people because so many kids in my class and even family, like they didn't know what Bitcoin was. They didn't know what this was going to do. And I felt like I was greedy, holding some information back that I needed to share with everybody. So that's why I just started tweeting. I was like, hey, what's going on, crypto Twitter? How's it going? And just went from there.
I'm wondering, with all the interviews you've done, you've got some great interviews under your belt now. I know that if I speak from our side, Wade and I have learned so many great things from the guests that we've had on the show during those interviews. And I wondered if it's the same for you, if doing those interviews, you know, there's some key learnings you've had, and if those are great opportunities you find for yourself to further, you know, you get educated live as you're like talking to these individuals. Is that something that's also true for you? And do you have any particular moments maybe where you learned something that you really didn't know about right there on the spot?
Well, that's a good question, because I absolutely love my show, the Missing Crypto Show, and the Daily Zest too I have now. But the Missing Crypto Show, it's so amazing, and I love it so much. Like, it's really my passion. And I think it's because my show, it's walking through the journey of like their lives, like, you know, how they started off in college or high school and how they got to where they are now and the progression of their life, especially in crypto, because you see that everyone comes from different, it doesn't matter like what your race is, what your gender is, where you come from in the world, what's like social economic status you're at. Everyone could be a part of this space, and everyone finds their way here to be a part of this one revolution. So for me, it's so interesting to see where people have gone. And probably the biggest thing that I've learned from my guests and from my show is that although these people, a lot of them did not take the traditional path in life, that you could still make it. As long as you believe in yourself and you're able to have that discipline and you're able to just keep pushing and grinding and working, then eventually it'll work out. And that's probably the biggest thing I learned. And it's my biggest motivator. And it's like, oh, I love it so much. So I'm so thankful for everyone on my show that takes the time to like sit with me, explain their story, and get to where they are now. It's just really special.
So what was it like for your dad? I mean, he's going to Litecoin Summit, that conference, and you have Charlie Lee on your show. Like, what was his reaction to that type of thing?
Yeah, my dad, he's always pretty just like crazed out a little bit because of like where everything has gone, because I initially didn't like crypto. I thought he was crazy for a few years until it clicked for me. And I was like, why are you talking to all these people? What's this internet money stuff? And then it was like this complete turnaround. So it was like kind of a shock for him that I went from just having no interest to it being my life. So he was just like, wow, like this is all happening. And, you know, he just loves it. A lot of the people he did start watching in this space, like a bunch of content creators that he started watching, are now on my show. And he's just like, wow, I was watching them a few years ago. Now we're talking to them. And it's just like a full circle type moment, especially with Charlie Lee, because Charlie Lee's a great guy. He's been on my show 3 times. I actually hosted him for the 10th Litecoin anniversary interview as well for LA Blockchain Summit. And I think that was November 2021. So that was just a great moment as well.
So what's all that like? I mean, just in general, this has kind of become your full-time focus, which is awesome. But like all of those experiences, the conferences, everything along those lines, like I know it's a big question, but like what has that experience been like, having all of those types of, you know, being able to travel to different places, interview all these people? And is this something that you're thinking, okay, long term, this is what I want, like I found what I want to do type thing?
Once I started looking into crypto, I knew this was my passion one way or the other. And everything that I do to, you know, everything in culmination of Missing Crypto, between like the on the street interviews, traveling, doing workshops, and hosting a podcast. This is everything I've ever wanted to do all in one. It's like every passion I've ever wanted to pursue in one job. And I'm just so thankful I get to do that. And going to conferences and going to schools, like I've traveled to Utah Valley University. I've talked to a bunch of schools in at Miami conferences, even going back to my old high school. It's just so much, and it's really amazing, and it's everything I love and more. So that's what makes me really excited about what I do. Besides the passion for crypto, is the passion I have for just everything about this.
So who's on your ultimate wish list to do an interview with in the future? One or more. If you've got a few to rail off, let us know.
Oh man, my list is so long. I feel like probably the next person I want to get on my show is Michael Saylor, or I want to get like I don't know, because there's just so many people. Like I want to get John Cena on my show. Yeah. I want to get Paris Hilton on my show. Like, you know, it's not just about crypto people. I love my crypto people, but I want to get crypto people. I want to get like different mainstream people on. Like I've had like anchors from Fox News, CNBC. I've had you know, MMA championship, like like people on like Ben Askren. I just had Chris Cyborg on, and she's killing it right now. Killing it. But yeah, I've had a ton of different people on. So I just want to continue on that path and expand the Miss Teen Crypto Show, just not only to crypto people, but media personalities as well. Because everyone, again, has their own journey to get to where they're at. And that's what I really love most about the show.
One of the things you had mentioned a little bit earlier in the conversation was NFT or like Web3 gaming and that type of thing. So what's your experience been, and why are you bullish on that concept?
NFT gaming is so amazing because even before, like I was talking about being little, getting iTunes gift cards, getting digital cash, and just getting digital currencies and transacting with those and getting those digital assets. Well, Web3 just elevates all of it. Well, now I could trade those assets, give it to a friend. I could sell it on a secondary market, make a profit, or rent them out, which I think is amazing because it teaches Gen Z a lot about economics in that kind of stance where you're understanding the markets. You take a look at your asset compared to the same asset and the rarities on the market, see where yours fits in, how you could sell it, or hey, I'm not using this asset. How could I still make money off of that or still profit within the gaming ecosystem from that asset? And you can rent it out to other people and make deals with them on how much they earn and how much profit you take from what they earn in the game. There's just so much to that I think is really amazing. And also, it could just start off so simply. A lot of games now are free to play where you just get in the game like any other game. And then once you start earning things, then you're like, hey, what's this asset? Oh, it's an NFT. What can I do with it? I think it spreads education in a really nice and pleasant way because everyone's a gamer at some capacity, whether you're playing Sudoku or you're playing Candy Crush. Everyone's a gamer at some point and has maybe spent $1 or $2 on games at some point. It's only inevitable that Web3 is going to step in and really change that for people. I'm very, very bullish on it. So bullish on it.
I am also very bullish on Web3 gaming, but it does seem like it's very of all the like sort of the emerging sub industries within crypto, Web3 gaming, I feel like has a big barrier, and we've seen a lot of pushback from gamers themselves, from big companies. A lot of it has to do with where the technology is at. A lot of it has to do with NFTs and sentiment around NFTs. What are your thoughts on so Web3 gaming as a whole? I can understand you're bullish on, but like, what about these sort of smaller aspects, the more minute details around, like, let's say, for example, NFTs in games? Like, if you can own your skins, let's say, for your character in a game, well, that's great and all, but does that now change the game to be something where people are no longer just playing for fun? Now they're playing the game purely because they want to get skins, because now they want to go sell skins, and it becomes this whole like game within a game? Or is that stuff that we already experience? So, what are your thoughts on some of those more, I guess, smaller details?
So there's a few problems I saw with NFT gaming. Of course, it's not perfect. And I think even before this, people were trading their assets, even though they weren't supposed to, on like kind of like the black market of gaming, where people were selling accounts to transfer skins and all that stuff. So that was still happening in Web 2. Now just Web 3 makes it easier and more transparent for people to do that. I think, especially in Web 3 gaming, one of the problems I did see early on that's being kind of fixed now with the newer games is the tokenomics and the economy within the games were not sustainable. And I've even said this publicly on Twitter Spaces, like, I don't care. If there's problems within the space, like, I'll say it. I do think that the tokenomics were not sustainable. I think a lot of them were turned into just like clickers that were all about the pump, and it was about the pumpamentals versus the fundamentals of the project. And I think, within any market, you're going to see that. Like, we still have meme tokens. We're going to have those types of things pop up, but I think a lot of them were just not sustainable. And again, I think a lot of them were less about the gameplay and more about the pumping. I think that is changing a lot because we see a lot of big companies. We see a lot of big people that are now have a lot of people behind them, a lot of good development that are working hard to make a good game. And I think once that happens, like anything else, it's a progression. The space is extremely, extremely early. I think once that happens, there's going to be a really good game that goes viral and people are going to flood into this space. But again, we're extremely early. And I think a lot of those stuff were just tests to see what works and what doesn't.
Randi, love just all of your answers in this interview. You're absolutely, it's just one of those things where it's cool to see like how confident and knowledgeable you've come, because you clearly, like, there's some people who get into the space and they kind of just talk around, and it's kind of like they don't fully have the grasp, but it's really clear that you have a firm understanding of this. One thing I'm curious about, because we're coming toward the end of the interview where we ask you the same 3 questions we ask every guest. But before that, I'm curious, you mentioned earlier in the conversation that when you first started talking about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, especially in your high school and that type of thing, that people were checking on you. Are you okay? You know, we're not sure if that, like, this is a scam, this is a Ponzi. Then price appreciation happened and people are like, oh, okay, you know, this starts to make sense. Now that we've come back into a bear market, and especially with things like what happened in November with FTX, and again, that was a centralized exchange. That's not crypto, but people's understanding sometimes gets lumped together. Are you seeing that reemerge a little bit? Some of those conversations of, oh, I don't know if you're in a good industry, you know, it's collapsed or that type of thing. Or what is your general sentiment? Maybe not from people on crypto Twitter, but some of your friends and family in real life.
I don't think any of it, I think the positivity part has stayed, especially because they saw me when Bitcoin was $7,000. And even with the price it is now, you're still technically in profit if you listen to me when I first got in and were like, hey, maybe I should have looked into that. Because I never gave anyone financial advice. I was just telling them about it, right? So I think a lot of the positivity has stayed, especially within my family, because like they see my stuff all the time. Like I just went to a family reunion last week and they're like, Randy, I see your videos. Like, you know, they're funny. And I'm like, okay, thanks. And they're like, you know, I see what you're doing. So I think just people seeing what I'm doing and that I'm still here, I'm still pushing for it, and I'm still doing things. Like I was just with the mayor of New York like 2 months ago, talking about Bitcoin and crypto to 16, I think it was like 16 to 25 was the age group that was there. But my family and the people that were following me still see that I'm pushing. So I guess that doesn't really scare them, especially because I've been saying it for a long time. Like I do a lot of educational content. I've always said since I got into the space, take your crypto off of the exchanges, and that way you're safe. So if something like FTX did happen, that you didn't get wrecked. And a lot of people actually told me that because they saw that type of content, that they did actually remove their crypto from the exchanges. So I think maybe I helped somebody out of this.
Totally. That's
At least
awesome.
I hope so.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, as I mentioned, we like to end every episode of Show Me the Crypto with the same 3 questions we ask every guest. It's a segment we call You Had Me at Crypto. Ulf's going to ask you those questions.
All right, Randy, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. First question. Who's your favorite person to follow in the crypto space?
Oh my gosh. That's so hard.
You're going to make one friend and a lot of enemies.
I know. What am I doing here? I guess, you know what? I'm going to say it, and it's so corny, but the whale alerts. Whale alerts. Because if you've been watching those, that's all you need to know. That's all you need to know is the whale alerts.
I like that one. We haven't had anyone who's chosen that before or anything.
Yeah, I'm just going to be totally honest. Yeah. I've been seeing some crazy stuff.
Cool.
Some crazy stuff.
All right. Second question. What will the price of Bitcoin be 10 years from now?
We know you don't like to make price predictions. However, this is 10 years out and it's just for fun.
Yeah, this is just
We'll preface it with not financial advice. If you had to throw a dart at a number, what would you say?
10 years. I would want to be like the most perma bull and say $1 million of Bitcoin, but I know that's probably not going to be 10 years down the line. I don't know. And I don't think anyone knows, because again, what I'm thinking about in the next 10 years is, are we going to have accessibility to our funds at all? The fiat system is changing. They want to phase out, traditional cash, that fiat that maybe you're hiding under your bed isn't going to be even useful because maybe you can't spend it anymore. Even right now, I can't spend $100 bills, $50 bills. People don't want to take it. So the accessibility to our money is going to change. CBDCs are coming out, Revolution, Crossroads. Who knows where that could take us in 10 years? I think maybe in less than 10 years, we're going to have that battle.
So I heard 1 million. I'm just kidding.
That's what I would like to say, because I'm like, I want to be like the most perma bull out there, but I don't know.
That is, believe it or not, the most common answer to that question.
Yeah.
I think
that's what I want to say.
Yeah, you're episode 95, and I think we've heard 1 million the most times. So,
yeah. All right. Third question. What is the most underrated coin or project in all of crypto?
Wow. You guys are the hard-hitting ones. I think I would have to say right now, what I'm looking out for is Litecoin. And I always hand out my cards. I don't even know. Do I have a card in front of me? I guess not. I have my cards where I give out to people on the street. Always had Bitcoin, Litecoin, and ETH. Those are the ones I watch out for. So I probably Litecoin and ETH.
Cool.
Awesome. Love it. Well, Randy, you have crushed this interview. Thank you so much for joining Ulf and I on this episode of Show Me the Crypto.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast for sure.
Thank you for listening to Show Me the Crypto. Please make sure to subscribe as well as rate and review this podcast.